Members, good afternoon. It's the appointed time and we have a quorum. Since the last meeting, the Secretariat has issued one information paper regarding annual adjustment to Social Security payment rates provided by the administration. The detail of the paper is set out on the agenda. The Secretariat on the 26th of January submitted the papers to members. Prior to the meeting, no members requested to have a discussion on this particular paper. The next meeting will be held on the 16th of March at 4:30 p.m. It's a Monday, and the administration proposes discussing the following items: A. Measures and support services to promote employment for persons with disabilities, and B. Legislative amendments regarding the establishment of a new professional rank of health and care practitioner for the social welfare sector. Do members agree that we discuss the above items in the next meeting? All right. On the 4th of February, Deputy Chair and I will have a meeting with the administration to discuss the work plan for the 2026 legislative session, and we'll also discuss the items to be discussed in this coming year. Agenda item 3. The Child Development Fund Program. Please refer to LC paper number CB-161/2026-02 and -03. This is a financial proposal, so all members of the Legislative Council are invited to join the discussion of this item. Also, I'd like to remind members, please take note of the disclosure of pecuniary interests in relation to Rule 83A of the Rules of Procedure. According to Rule 83A, members must not speak or move any motions for items in which they have direct or indirect pecuniary interests in. So I'd like to remind members that if you have any direct or indirect pecuniary interests in relation to this discussion item, please disclose the nature of such interests before you speak on the item. Now I'll invite the administration to walk us through the paper, LC paper number CB-161/2026-02. Members who'd like to speak, please press the request to speak button. Under Secretary. Thank you, Chair. The government attaches importance to poverty alleviation as well as the support for children. Therefore, in the 2025 policy address, the government announced the injection of $180 million to the Child Development Fund to promote the long-term development of upper primary students from disadvantaged communities. We learned from the success of the Strive and Rise program to reduce intergenerational poverty. To encourage children from disadvantaged communities to plan for their future and cultivate positive attitudes, the government set up this fund in 2008. With a tripartite and cross-sector collaboration among the community and family, the business sector and the government, the CDF funds NGOs and schools to implement projects in various districts for creating conditions conducive to the growth of children from disadvantaged communities. Each CDF project aims to encourage children to cultivate positive attitudes. This also aims to create more opportunities for children. We encourage parents as well as mentors to accompany children to look for their goals, and this is a very meaningful project. Each CDF project lasts for 3 years. Through 3 key components, namely personal development plan, targeted savings, and mentorship, the projects encourage children to plan for their future. Also, there are training and value-added activities for participating children, parents, and mentors to help children cultivate a supportive environment for their personal development. Since the establishment of this fund, the government has injected $1.08 billion for the implementation of projects. So far, the fund has already implemented 355 projects benefiting over 30,000 children and youths from grassroots families. The remaining commitment of the fund is not enough to support the 2026 batch of projects. In order to ensure the sustainable development of the CDF program, the Chief Executive announced in his 2025 policy address to inject $118 million to the fund to focus on supporting primary 3 to 6 students from disadvantaged families. The funding will be used on CDF projects to be launched from 2026-27 onwards to cover, amongst others, the expenditure on training provided by operators to children, their parents and mentors, special financial incentives for children who have achieved their saving targets, and administrative expenses. Each project will run for 3 years. The additional funding is expected to benefit a further 5,400 children. While we continue to carry on the CDF projects, we learned from the success of the Strive and Rise program to enhance the fund projects. We propose introducing 2 thematic activities, including 1, career aspirations. For example, we will arrange for all kinds of visits and experiential activities, such as government disciplined forces, transport, finance and wealth management, healthcare and innovation and technology, to inspire participants. This will help them better plan their future careers. The second element is understanding society and environment. For example, we will organize a diverse range of enrichment activities such as visits to historic buildings, infrastructure facilities, and nature reserves, as well as adventure training to deepen participants' understanding of society and the ecological environment, broaden their horizons, and build social skills, thereby encouraging them to contribute actively to social development and environmental protection. We welcome members' views. We will listen to your views carefully and will respond to your questions. Thank you. 11 members have asked to speak. I'll read out their names. Mr. Chen Pui-leung, Ms. Elaine Chik, Mr. Scott Leung, Mr. Andrew Lam, Mr. Chao Xiu-chung, Ms. Grace Chan, Mr. Chen Pui-kong, Mr. Alex Fan, Mr. Hong Kam-in, Mr. Bill Tang, and Ms. Ginny Man. 3 minutes for each member, including questions and answers. Mr. Chen Pui-leung, please. Thank you, Chair. This CDF, after review, will roll out some 33 projects that are non-government-led, as well as another batch of NGO-led projects. In the last batch, that is the 9th batch, there were 30 non-government-led projects and 24 school-based projects. And this fund will provide services for primary 3 to primary 6 students. The government is taking out secondary students from this program, so that there won't be overlap between this program as well as the Strive and Rise program. So 14 schools will be out of the program. What is the consideration behind for districts like Shamshui-po, Tai-po, and the North District? During the 9th batch, there were 3 to 4 NGOs participating in the program, but for the 10th batch, there was a drop of number in terms of NGO projects. So again, what is the consideration behind? Undersecretary. I'll ask Mr. Chen to supplement later. Like Mr. Chen Pui-leung said, there is some overlap between the CDF and the Strive and Rise program. So we are taking out junior secondary school students from the program. We will strive to improve the operation of the program. For schools, we invite students to join the program, but for groups, we invite groups of students to join. There are pros and cons to the 2 approaches. For school-based projects, there will be more support from teachers. So there are 2 channels for groups and schools to sign up. Yes, Chair. For each batch, we expect about 3,000 students to join the program, and the number stays relatively stable. For the 9th batch, there's a slight increase in terms of the number of participants. That's because when we recruited students for the 9th batch, there were more applicant organizations, and they offered more quotas to students. Considering that there were enough resources for the 9th batch, we approved more applications. And for the 10th batch, we kept the number at around 3,000 in terms of the number of participants and beneficiaries. Every time we roll out a new batch of projects, we take into consideration the needs of different districts. The fund office, based on the information about median monthly income in Hong Kong provided by the Census and Statistics Department, decide on the number of quotas we should approve. That is, we allow participants from families that earned lower than 75% of the monthly median income to join the program. We also look at the proposals as well as the needs of different districts as we approve the quota. For districts including Sham Shui Po as well as Tsuen Wan and Kwai Ching with more grassroots families, we approve more quotas. Next, Ms. Ling. Thank you, Chairman. I understand that one of the major elements of the CDF is the 2-year-long targeted savings program. I know that starting from the 10th batch, with the new round of 5,400 quotas, there is a prerequisite of meeting the government's matching fund requirement. Well, I want to know if there are many cases that do not meet the prerequisite or requirements. I wonder if any disputes arose from the requirements. There is also requirements in relation to good track record as well as good attendance rate. I want to know if this has any impact on the participation rate of students. I want to know if these requirements pose any negative impacts on the participating children. So I want to know the effectiveness of the prerequisites. Chair, I defer to Ms. Chen. Yes, Ms. Chen. There is an incentive under the CDF. This incentive has been rolled out since the inception of the fund. The prerequisite mentioned was introduced after the review in 2023. Well, let me put it this way. When can the participating children start using the targeted savings? In the past, participating children could start using the targeted saving starting from the 24th month to realize its personal plan. However, after the review in 2023, starting from the 14th batch in 2024, we revised the requirements. This is because we consider that some children may want to start using their savings earlier. Therefore, we relaxed the relevant requirements. That is, participating children can, starting from the 13th month of the program, start using their targeted saving to realize their personal development plans. Since they are allowed to use their targeted saving earlier, we remind participating children to meet certain conditions and requirements before they use the savings. Most of the operating organizations would ask participating children to display good performance as well as good attendance rate for the first year of the program. For example, if the attendance rate is good for the first 4 sessions of the training programs, we could relax the restrictions or requirements. So the program has been running for a while. We see that for some participating children, they choose to use their targeted savings starting from the 13th month. But the number is rather on the low side. Most of the participating children would use their savings starting from the 19th or even the 24th month.
Mr. Lai Man Kong. Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the Child Development Fund making use of the 3 components, personal development plan, targeted savings, and mentorship to minimize intergenerational poverty. But I am also concerned how we can quantify the performance of the projects. Is there some sort of assessment mechanism or follow-up mechanism to follow up on the children to see how they're doing in secondary schools, whether there are changes in their family circumstances? And in turn, will that affect your approach towards this program? And the Child Development Fund and the Strive and Rise program are complementary. The Child Development Fund would target primary 3 to 6 students. For Strive and Rise program, it would target secondary 1 to secondary 4 students. I want there to be a seamless transition. Can we accord priority to those who have participated in the Child Development Fund projects, and in turn they can join the Strive and Rise program? I want to ask also if there's some sort of mechanism to ensure stability and continuous participation of the participants. And you also talked about how there are some new components where you would have career aspirations and understanding society and environment. I would suggest you incorporate some Greater Bay Area elements so as to broaden children's horizons early on. You talked about reducing intergenerational poverty with the programs. But right now, the Child Development Fund only targets primary 4 to 6 students. Can we start earlier so that we can cover those who are in primary 1 to 3? Thank you. I believe there are 5 questions on the secretary. I would say the younger primary students may not know much about the future. So I think senior primary school students would be more appropriate as a target group. Of course, there are some similarities between the Child Development Fund projects and the Strive and Rise program, but there are more resources allocated for the Strive and Rise program, of course. I will ask Ms. Chan to supplement my answers in due course. As for KPIs, we already did 3 reviews from 2013 to 2020. We engaged different universities for the reviews, including the Polytechnic University and the University of Hong Kong. We found that with the findings, there was a positive impact on the students. And for those living in subdivided units, they may be living in urban areas, but because they are in less ideal circumstances, they don't really go to some parts of a neighborhood. So we do see a positive impact, and we will consider engaging a consultant or university to conduct a review in future again. Ms. Zhou Chen, thank you. Mentorship support is very important. So when we are operating the program, we do ask operators to provide core training to mentors, including how they can better understand children and youth, how to help children and youth manage their finances and achieve career goals, communication skills, etc. We do also ask operators to try to retain mentors as much as possible to make contributions to the program and projects. As for activities to know more about the Greater Bay Area and the country, as said earlier, the Undersecretary already talked about how we have 2 new aspects, and we're considering other project elements to include for the program. The year after, we will refer to your feedback. Thank you. Mr. Andrew Lam. Thank you, Chair. I have 2 questions on the Child Development Fund. Between 2008 and 2018, we have injected $900 million, and later on we had another injection of $1.08 billion. Does that mean there is a need for continuous operation of the Child Development Fund? And in future, with funding, will there be recurring funding, or will we have some sort of a long-term review policy to make injections from time to time? I also note that report number 73 of 2019 of the Audit Commission talked about clawback of funding, and it should only take 14 days to complete, but many did not meet this goal. Instead, it took 25 days to complete. So I want to ask, what is the latest situation? What are the figures in recent years? Has there been improvement in the situation, or have you been monitoring the situation at all? Thank you. Under Secretary, I will ask Mr. Fletch Chen to answer this question. Thank you, Mr. Lam, for your question. The Child Development Fund has been operating for quite some time, and after undergoing several reviews, we do see it bringing about a positive impact. But for the operation mode, we are reviewing whether we can have a more complementary approach alongside the operations of the Strive and Rise program. At this moment, we apply for funding when we have run down the existing reserves. We will try to adopt this model for now, but we will undergo reviews if necessary. What about clawback of reserves of funding? Ms. Zhou Chen. If operators have not used up some of the funding, we will recover the funds. For the 9th and 10th batch, we are still undergoing audits. So we haven't done the settlement just yet. But when we dealt with the 8th batch funding, there have been some leftovers. It is actually quite a significant sum. We are still following up on that. Thank you, Chair. I have a simple follow-up, if you allow it. Sure. I want to ask, there is a requirement of 14 days, and after all, we have a recommendation in the audit report. I want to know if you're following that recommendation. We'll provide information after the meeting. Thank you. Mr. Chao Siu-chung. Thank you, Chair. I support the injection proposal. Looking back a few years, the Polytechnic University conducted a study, and the findings showed that the participants would achieve higher income in due course. They have more positive emotions. I believe there is a positive impact in reducing intergenerational poverty. I have some questions on qualifications of mentors. With Child Development Fund projects, the mentors have to be 18 years old or above. For the Strive and Rise program, it would be 21 years old or above. Is it because with Child Development Fund, you don't mind having younger mentors, whereas for the Strive and Rise program, you would want someone who is more experienced, who are more mature in their life stage? Second, I also note that some operators, when they recruit mentors, they have certain requirements. For other operators, there are different requirements. So does the Social Welfare Department have some sort of guidelines on the eligibility criteria of mentors? My third question is, I also note the audit report in 2019, they talked about the participation rate and attendance rate of mentors, and the number of activities they took part, 28% and 47% of the mentors did not meet the relevant criteria. I want to ask if we've seen some improvement in the 9th and 10th batches. If not, what is the Social Welfare Department's plans for improving the rates? I also note that for the targeted savings plans, with the enhancement measures, one can start using the money in the 13th month. I want to ask if there are different arrangements for the different portions, that is, the matching funds provided by the private sector, by the government, as well as those saved by the mentee. Undersecretary, thank you. I will ask Ms. Zhou Chen to supplement my answers in due course. With mentors, apart from age, we also have a criterion about sex. Under the Strive and Rise program, we actually need more female mentors because female mentors can support both male and female participants, whereas male mentors can only support male participants. So we need a lot of female mentors. If you have any suggestions or recommendations, please make so. As for the age, we think that younger mentors would be appropriate, 18 or above, of course, to support those who are younger under the Child Development Fund projects. As for the Strive and Rise program, we of course was older mentors because the target group is secondary 1 to secondary 4 students. We want there to be more of an age gap to provide better support. Ms. Zhou Chen. About the targeted savings, as long as some criteria are met and if they have in place a personal development plan, they can make use of the savings starting from the 13th month. The matching funds provided by the government and the private sector can be disbursed also in the 13th month. As for mentors, well, I asked about the attendance rate. We did not meet the target before. Have you seen improvement in the situation? Do you have any measures to improve on the situation? Ms. Zhou Chen. Mentors would have to, in accordance with our requirements, contact the participants once per month. Mentors also have to take part in the activities of operators within 3 years. 5 activities, they have to attend at least 4 of them. As for the monthly targets, whether they met the requirements, I do not have such information on hand, especially for the 10th batch. We can provide such information after the meeting. Please provide such after the meeting. Thank you. Ms. Grace Chen. I recognize the efforts of the Child Development Fund projects. We do see a low withdrawal rate according to data, so it seems that projects are quite attractive to participants. We do not have the data for the 10th batch just yet, but can there be, or is there a mechanism right now that we can identify early on participants who would like to withdraw so that we can provide support to them? I see that a lot of people quoted a withdrawal reason being due to family circumstances. Can we provide follow-up or referral services to them after they have withdrawn? Ms. Zhou Chen. Thank you. When schools and NGOs submit their plans for the projects, we ask that they put in place a mechanism in their plans to identify early on participants with low motivation. And they also have to come up with ways to increase the participation rate. Hopefully with this, schools and NGOs, and we can work with them to plan in advance to increase motivation of participants and the participation rate. If one has withdrawn due to family circumstances and they have such need for social services, operators and schools, with their consent, can refer them to other social service units.
Does that answer your questions? All right. Next, Mr. Chen Bui-kong. Thank you, Chair. My comment is that we should expand the scope of this program to cover more children. The program targets poor children, and there is consensus among the community that we should offer support to these children. There are still many marginal families, or broken families we call. For children who grow up in these families, they may need support even though they may not be living in poverty. For those in broken families, they would need mentors to help them face their lives so that they can live with a positive mind. Will there be flexibility in this regard? Will quotas be reserved to these children so that participating organizations can invite students who grow up in marginal families to take part in the program? Undersecretary. Currently, we have enough quotas, I believe. I'll ask Ms. Chen to supplement afterwards. I think more importantly, we have to identify these children. Just now, as mentioned, for groups, they can cover a wider district. They will be able to identify more effectively students in need. As for school-based programs, the advantage is that teachers spend a long time with their students, so they will be able to identify students from marginal families. But the downside is that it would be very challenging for schools to take up the entire program themselves. So that's why we have two channels for organizations and schools to sign up for the fund. Yes. Under the SWD, there are various service programs for young children as well as adolescents to take care of young people with different needs. But I think Mr. Chung raised a very good suggestion. If we identify any children or young people from marginal families, perhaps we could allow them to join the CDF if they are from primary 3 to primary 6. We will see how we can better consolidate the program to see how we can better cover these children in need. Next, Mr. Alex Fan. Thank you, Chairman. I declare that I have been a mentor under the CDF twice, and I have also been a mentor under the Strive and Rise program twice, and this year I am one of the mentors under the Strive and Rise program. I have a couple of questions. First, the question is related to the studies mentioned by Mr. Scotland. In 2013, 2017, and 2020, there are studies on the effectiveness of the program. However, I wonder if the government would consider carrying out a more systematic studies, or what we call longitudinal studies, to track the effectiveness of the CDF program. Well, you must carry out studies, a systematic one, to look at the attitudes of participating children as well as their social skills and their ability to move up the social ladder. I understand that the program is now focusing on primary 3 to primary 6 students, so the targets are now a little different from the previous version of the program, but I think it's never too late to carry out this kind of studies. Also, another kind of studies that you may consider is to identify children who did not take part or who take part in this program. What are the positive impacts for the participating children? The Strive and Rise program, there is a more complete studies to track the effectiveness of the program. So I wonder if there is a similar studies for the CDF program. Now, turning to the quality of participating organizations. I understand that so far there are 37 NGOs and 106 schools that are participating in the program. Now, compared to the Strive and Rise program, under the Strive and Rise program, we have some well-known NGOs participating. As for the CDF program, it covers organizations and schools of different scales and from different backgrounds. So is there any mechanism to monitor the quality of the participating organizations? Also, were there cases in which operating organizations had to rectify their mistakes or defects? Undersecretary, I will first respond to some of the questions. I thank the member for the suggestions. Indeed, we will carry out a tracking studies as well as a comparison study. As for the tracking studies, we look at the changes of participating children after the program. In 2013 and in 2020, we did this kind of tracking studies. For the first tracking study, we looked at children from 2008 to 2012. That is, we looked at the changes before and after joining the program. In 2020, we did a studies on children during the 2nd and the 7th year of the program. During the 7th year, they are already at university, so we try to look at the changes. We did see that students displayed improvement. And in 2017, we did a comparison study. That is, we compared students who took part in the program and those who did not participate in the program. And we realized that this is a very good program that brings positive impacts to children. Now I'll defer to Ms. Chen. Ms. Chen, just now Mr. Fan mentioned about the number of participating organizations, that is the number accumulated over the 10 batches. To provide you with some information, over the 10 batches, 33 non-government-led programs were run by 25 NGOs, and among them, 16 NGOs are receiving subsidies from the SWD, and another 9 are non-subvented NGOs. There are 10 school-based programs run by 10 schools. As we consider the applications from organizations and schools, we issued a specification to them. So applicant organizations have to, in accordance with the specification, submit their proposal. We have an assessment mechanism in place. We look at whether the applicant organization meet our requirements. We also assess their quality as we look for the right organization. And as we assess the applications, we look at the content of their proposals, the experience of the organizations, as well as the past track record of these organizations, as well as their financial management capabilities. In terms of monitoring the quality of the organizations, in our specification, we set out clearly that during the program, they have to meet certain indicators in terms of their service capacity or service volume. They have to regularly, in each quarter or in each year, provide financial statement as well as independent audited statement to us. Also, we ask these participating organizations to conduct their own assessments and submit the relevant reports to us. Our office that oversees the CDF also regularly or irregularly conduct site visits. For example, we visit the offices of the participating organizations and we review their documents to see if the services they provide meet our requirements set out in the service agreement. If they fail to meet our indicators in terms of their service volume, we may have to take out some of the subsidies from them. Next, Mr. Hong Kam In. Investing in our children is like investing in our future. So the SAR government is doing a good job in terms of rolling out this CDF to offer help to children from the disadvantaged community. I have a couple of questions. First, since 2008, that is the establishment of the CDF, it's been 18 years now. Over the 18 years, the government carried out 3 assessment studies, and we've got very good feedback from these studies. Is there further information that would allow us to learn more about the findings of these 3 studies so that we can think together how we can better improve the program? Also, over the past 18 years, I believe that the participating children, some of them have already found a job. Is there any studies that looks at how these grown-ups are doing? Are these grown-ups willing to offer help to younger students? If they are willing to offer support to the existing participants, it would really bring out a positive impact. Undersecretary, it's been some time since we conducted the review, and all the information has already been uploaded to our website. If members would like more information, I could provide the report to members to see how it was written. We only have the executive summary now, but I believe members are more interested in the details of the report. Perhaps we could provide the report to the Secretariat. I'm looking for a consolidated report because there have been 3 studies already. We could follow up on the recommendations or findings of these 3 studies. If there is a consolidated report, we will not have to read the 3 reports one by one. Undersecretary, I'll ask Deputy Secretary to supplement. Perhaps we can come up with a consolidated summary. We ask for members' understanding because the 3 studies were carried out at 3 different times. So there have been changes since we first conducted the studies. For example, we first focused on primary schools, and then we focused on secondary school students. Now we focus on upper primary students. So we have to pay special attention to the 3 studies. We may not be able to look at the 3 studies together. Chair, there are still some questions unanswered. Yes, which question? Over the past 18 years, some participating children have already grown up. Are they willing to take part or contribute to the program? Undersecretary, I know that this is similar to the alumni club of the Strive and Rise program. It's kind of hard for us to identify the alumni. The current alumni are still very young. When they get to secondary school, if they are interested in joining the program, we would see how they could participate. Well, this is raised by a number of members already. Well, let's see if we can further improve the review mechanism. Next, Mr. Bill Tang. This is not a regularized program, but it has been running for 18 years. Back then, I was a member of the Islands District. I believe the Undersecretary had just graduated then in 2008. But it has been sticking to the 3 major elements: personal development, targeted savings, as well as mentorship. I remember there was a consultation in Tongchong, and the administration talked about their vision of the program. Back then, it was the transport allowance, and now it has become the working family allowance. It was a major change in the government's policy back then. The program has been running for 18 years. If there's no value to the program, it will not continue to run. Even for the Strive and Rise program, it is still running, and extra resources have been allocated to that program. So I want to know if the administration will come up with an official decision to regularize this program. If the government decides not to, what is the consideration behind? Also, As I said, this is a program that's been running for 18 years. Please do not just submit a report. Will you invite, for example, an online celebrity to trace the participating children who has grown up? Some of the participating children, some of the children who participated, they may be 28 years old now. Could these grown-ups be a new generation of mentors for the CDF programs? Did anyone achieve any major accomplishments from the program? I think we should not waste the resources we dedicated to this program. Is it possible to get in touch with organizations who took part in the program 18 years ago, and would they be able to help us find the children or mentors who took part in the program? And second, please respond to my question about why you do not regularize the program. Undersecretary.
Thank you, Member, for your questions. We have been implementing the program for some time, as Mr. Tang said, and he should also understand we have significant changes in the strategy of poverty alleviation. We had many new measures launched. We now have a targeted poverty alleviation policy. So we have seen some evolution. We are constantly changing. We have been constantly identifying things to improve on, to be more targeted. While we did not specifically mention this, we did enjoy helping the underprivileged children to provide support to them, with a view to reducing intergenerational poverty in the end. We help children. So if we want to conduct studies, we may need more time to actually gauge the results. But I guess the general direction has not changed. While we do implement different other changes. As for whether we're going to regularize the program, I think we should wait until we have a clear model. But we are constantly evolving and making improvements. Once we have a more stable operation mode, we'll see what to do. I hope that answers your question. Ms. Ginny Mann. Thank you, Chair. I want to ask if the government has gauged how the participants made use of the targeted savings funds in the end. After we also have matching funds from the private sector and the government, would the administration consider making the funds accountable so as to ensure the funds are used appropriately? We also have mentors and institutions providing support, teaching the participants about financial education. But we have to understand parents also play a key role in financial education. So is there any training for them as well? Ms. Zhou Chen. Thank you. For targeted savings, before the participants make use of the funds, they need to have in place a personal development plan, and the plan has to be approved by their mentors and operators before they implement the plans. And the funds are used on an accountable basis. But let me say this. For the personal development plans, if their plans cannot be completed within the 3-year cycle, they can continue with their efforts with the residual funds outside of the 3-year cycle. As for financial education. Apart from having participants make plans and use funds in accordance with such plans, we do have training and workshops for parents. We ask for operators to arrange for parents 5 training sessions, and the training sessions would cover content on financial education. Thank you, Chair. Professor Chen Wing-Kwong. Thank you, Chair. I agree with the vision of the program. But apparently, after targeted savings were made after 2 years, they will only have 14,400 Hong Kong dollars. How much has that actually helped with participants' implementation of their personal development plans? Does the government gauge this? And has the administration looked at how it has actually reduced intergenerational poverty? And according to a survey, over 70% of the grassroots families did not participate in the initiatives, the Child Development Fund program or the Strive and Rise program, because they were not aware of such programs. How can the administration promote these 2 programs better so that more families with needs can take part in the programs? Thank you. Under Secretary, I will ask Ms. Zhou Chan to answer the questions. Thank you, Chair. On assessments in relation to use of targeted savings, as the Undersecretary said, we had on 3 occasions engaged universities to conduct studies, and the studies covered the use of targeted savings. I will not repeat the findings here. As for publicity, for the Child Development Fund program and the Strive and Rise program, we continue to promote to NGOs and schools the relevant programs so that more targeted group will take part in the programs. Chair, excuse me, I have follow-up questions. There is no content on the paper talking about how we are helping participants implement the personal development plans. I think it's very important that after they have saved money, they need to think about how it can help with their life goals. It may not be a significant sum, but we really need to facilitate their life planning. It is not covered in the paper, which is why I asked Under Secretary. I can perhaps refer to the report done of the study done in 2020. It talked about how 80.8% of the participants who took part in the program would save. As for those who didn't participate in the program, it's just 56.3%, and they can save each month $2,836 per month. For those who did not participate, they only save $1,623 per month. As for a long-standing impact, we do plan on conducting long-term studies in future to track the participants' performance. And we actually did note in the previous findings, 73% of them actually liked their jobs after they graduated. For those who did not participate, it would only be 38.8%. And they also achieve a higher income. 45.9% have a 15,000 or above income. For those who do not participate, it's just 25.4%. These are just some figures. We hope members can refer to the specific reports to see how much of a positive impact participants have after taking part in the programs. Mr. Sun Li, thank you, Chair. I think I'm the last to speak. Many members have already spoken on points that I wanted to make. I feel that the government is in a bad position because they cannot be too proud of themselves. They have to be prudent. So I think if the programs are good, we should promote them. The beneficiaries, children or students. I think we really should tell people about their lives after the programs. It's just to raise awareness. It's not just about getting more funding from the government. I think it can be a good reference for people to make plans to get out of poverty. If we have some examples, it would be good for a promotion. Many members are concerned about the transition between the Child Development Fund program and the Strive and Rise program. I will not repeat the concerns here. Lastly, I would like to declare a charitable organization that I serve takes part in the Child Development Fund program and the Strive and Rise program. That's the end of my declaration. Thank you. Any response from the administration? I would like to thank Mr. Stanley for taking part in the programs. I would also like to thank Professor Alex Fan for taking part in the programs actually. We may not be able to produce a famous TV program produced by Mr. Anthony Fong where he would find those who the TV station has interviewed in the past. But I think that is a good idea while we do have such resource constraints. We think it would be a good way to promote the programs so that more grassroots would be aware of the programs. We may not be able to engage Mr. Anthony Fong to produce a program, but we'll try to do better in district publicity. Thank you. Thank you. So the administration plans to inject $180 million into the Child Development Fund and would include that in the 2026-2027 budget. Do members support the administration's proposal? I believe members support the proposal. Let's move on to the next agenda item. Provision of welfare facilities at the development of Ling Village Site E. I would ask members to refer to LC paper number CB brackets 161/2026 brackets 04 paper provided by the administration. I believe we have another government official that is about to come inside the conference room, replacing one of the government officials we have here right now. I also remind members that in accordance with Rule 83A of the Rules of Procedure, members should disclose the nature of any direct or indirect pecuniary interests relating to the item under discussion before they speak on the item. Members who wish to speak, please press the Request to Speak button. I will now ask the Undersecretary to brief members on the proposal. Thank you, Chair. I would first like to brief members on the background because we don't often talk about works proposals at the panel on welfare services. In general, we would only talk about such when we report on the operations of the lotteries fund. But since we will have the approach of discussing works proposals at the respective panels, this is the first item we'll discuss at a panel this year. We do want to give some basic information to members for your reference. So for Ling Village Site E, we have a proposed project to provide welfare facilities at the public housing development. The Chief Executive announced in the 2019 policy address to redevelop the squatter area at the site to increase housing supply. And the Hong Kong Housing Society is responsible for developing, constructing, and managing the public housing units. It is planned that we will have 18,000 units provided, or 18,000 in population to be accommodated at the site. And after discussions between the Social Welfare Department and the Housing Society, we plan to provide 3 welfare facilities. That is a daycare center for the elderly, a neighborhood elderly center, and child care center. These are not the only welfare facilities we will provide in Chakoling Village. It's just in this site. We have consulted the relevant committee under the Kuntong District Council on this proposal. We will afterwards, if we receive approval or endorsement of members of the panel, we seek funding from the Public Works Subcommittee, and we will include the relevant conditions in the land grant conditions, and we expect that 5.5 years will be needed for construction of such facilities. And then the NGOs will conduct fitting out works. In money of the day prices, the estimate is $130.5 million. And there will be on costs payable to the Hong Kong Housing Society, but there is a cap on the percentage. I ask for members' comments on the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Undersecretary. We have plenty of time. I see that 8 members have asked to speak. I'll read out their names: Mr. Chen Pui Kong, Mr. Alex Fan, Mr. Chen Pui Lun, Mr. Bill Tang, Mr. Andrew Lam, Mr. Mark Chong, Ms. Ginny Man, and Mr. Hong Kam Yin. We have plenty of time, so I'll give each member 4 minutes, including questions and answers. Mr. Chen Pui Kong, please. Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the administration's effort. It's been willing to listen to our views. Mr. Alan Yung, as well as the Undersecretary, a few days ago had a meeting with the district councillors. I, as well as other DAB members, support this kind of facilities built by the government. I have a couple of questions. First, I hope that these kind of facilities can be built concurrently. Well, you cannot complete the construction works right away for residents that have recently moved in, or for the neighboring residents. You have to let them know that there will be such facilities in the future. That's my first point. Second, will you adopt a mixed service approach? For example, in the same center, will you provide services for different groups? There were voices asking for more flexible social welfare facilities. For example, one facility can be providing elderly care service in the daytime, and in the evening, the same center can be used to provide services for young people. This is because people of different age groups, they have different life patterns. So I want to know if the government is willing to adopt this kind of mixed service model. Undersecretary, I thank the member for the comments. For local residents who have recently moved in, this facility may not be as helpful for them, but for people living in Kuntong District, by 2034, this will be our 6th childcare center. In the coming years, there will be a couple of service centers, especially in Kuntong South. There will be a number of facilities in Pek One Road, as well as in other housing estates in the region, and they are within 15-minute walking distance or within a 5-minute ride between each other. So we will continue to build community facilities. As for the point about mixed service model, this is a bit challenging. This is because for daytime care centers, there are physiotherapists that help elderly people with their rehabilitation, and so it's hard for them to hide this equipment in the evening to provide services for young people. Of course, we'll look into it, but as far as I understand, this kind of centers will run during the day as well as during the evening. There are different activities, both during the day and at night for elderly people. But we will review the services provided by the Social Welfare Department to see if we can adopt the fixed service model. We have to adopt a holistic approach as we review this. Next, Mr. Alex Fan. Thank you, Chair. The government proposes building 3 types of facilities on this site, and I give my full support. My question has to do with the standardized care need assessment mechanism for elderly services. According to the paper, the daycare center for the elderly targets those who have passed the standardized care need assessment mechanism for elderly services. Can the administration tell us this? In Kunton district, currently for those who tender applications, from the time when they submit the application to when they actually get the service, how long does it take? Also, have you made an assessment of the difference in terms of the waiting time for those in Kunton district as well as in other districts? Are there elderly people who aren't able to benefit from the program because of a lack of facilities? If those living in Kunton district have to wait for a longer time for the elderly care service, will you consider deploying more manpower to deal with the standardized care need assessment? And the Secretary. Now, on the standardized care need assessment mechanism, it does not only target those who need daycare center services. We conduct this kind of assessment for all elderly people in need. If there are elderly people in need, we would try to give them a service place. There are not just subsidized daycare center service provided by the government. There are also residential care vouchers that elderly people can make use of. They can use services provided by subsidized organizations. For those who need residential care service, they could make use of our bought places as well as the places we offer in the GBA. Let's see if my colleague can supplement on the waiting time. As for how long applicants need to wait to get the services, I don't have the information at hand, but I believe the waiting time is not too long. In Hong Kong, we have about 2,200 elderly people waiting for daycare center services, and the average waiting time is 5 months. As far as I understand, in Kunton district, the waiting time is lower than 5 months. For individual districts, the waiting time may be longer, but I believe that the waiting time in general should not be too long. In fact, my mother also waited for this kind of services. According to my recollection, she only waited for about a month. Next, Mr. Chen Pui-leung. Thank you, Chair. I, in principle, support this project. My concern is the construction time. It will take 5.5 years according to the paper. Then you'll have to spend time on identifying the operating organization. Will it end up taking 6 to 7 years in order for the facilities to be put into service? Will you talk to the housing society to see if the facilities could be handed over to the operating organization so that the fitting out works could be carried out earlier? Then the facilities could be put into service earlier. Second question. The operating organizations will have to carry out the fitting out works. Will the service operators have to bear the costs of the fitting out works? If that's the case, will you stipulate the service period? Under Secretary, I'll ask Mr. Yong to reply. We want the facilities to be put into service as soon as possible. However, if we bring in another contractor, there might be conflicts. So when the construction works are almost done, we will do the inspection. And concurrently, we will conduct tendering exercise to identify the service operators. When the building is delivered, we will immediately arrange for the service contractors to carry out the fitting out works. As for the cost of the fitting out works, we have reserved funding for the service operators to carry out the fitting out works. Next, Mr. Bill Tang. Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of questions. First, for the 3 proposed centers, they are district facilities. However, this site in Ling is not very close to the MTR station and is not at the center of the Kwun Tong district either. Say the 3 facilities are built, will there actually be 20,000 residents who can make use of these facilities? Do you anticipate such a situation? Also, I understand that this will take 8 years to complete. This is rather a long time. And why are you asking for funding approval now? Even if you have asked for the funding approval from the Finance Committee, it will be the Architectural Services Department who will be in charge of this project. Say you get the $30 million of funding. How will you make use of the funding? Can you elaborate? Will the Housing Society identify the principal contractor for the construction works? And there won't be another tendering exercise to identify the principal contractor, is that right? So is the $130 million a precise estimate of how much money you need? As far as I understand, the land resumption process has not been completed in Ling. So I want to know how you will make use of the funding if it is approved. Maybe I didn't make myself clear enough just now. If we get the funding approval from the Finance Committee, we will incorporate this project into the land resumption procedure. At this point, the Housing Society has not been granted the site yet. It is only after we get the funding approval that we will grant the land to the Housing Society. According to our timetable, it will take the Housing Society 5.5 years to build the project. After that, the Housing Society will hand the site to the SWD, and then we will launch the tendering exercise. That's why we are asking for funding approval now. From now to 2034, there will be 4 to 5 child care centers to be completed in Kwun Tong, and there will be another 4 to 5 community facilities for other groups of people. So there should be sufficient facilities for people in Kwun Tong in the meantime. Let me supplement. Why are we asking for funding approval so early? This is because the site has not been granted officially to the Housing Society yet. Once the land is granted, the Lands Department will work on the documents, and then the Housing Society will work on the design and construction plan. As far as I understand, the site formation works are currently being carried out on the site. It is believed that by the end of this year, the site formation works will be completed, and then the Housing Society will take over. Sorry, I have to follow up. Then how do you come up with the estimate of $130 million? Well, we take into consideration different factors, including the conditions of the site as well as the challenges that we may encounter. For example, last year, there was a joint user complex project in Sham Shui Po, and we took into consideration the construction costs of that particular project. We also factor in inflation as we try to come up with the project estimate. The project estimate will be included in the land grant document. And in future, the Housing Society will have to stick to this project estimate. If the amount to be spent exceeds the project estimate, the Housing Society will have to bear the costs.
Chair, excuse me, I still have more follow-up questions because this is a funding proposal. I, as a LegCo member serving Kowloon East, I of course would want to express my support. I think with your information, it may be hard for you to tackle questions asked by other members in terms of finance and your plans, especially at the Public Works Subcommittee meeting. Thank you, member, for your reminder. We will have Architectural Services Department's representative here at the Public Works Subcommittee meeting to answer relevant questions. I believe what they said was there would be a cap for the on-cost payable, and right now the figure already included what they have planned up to 2028. I think it sounds all right to me if this is correct. Right. I guess we just want to hear from an expert on this. Thank you, Mr. Andrew Lam. Thank you, Chair. I would follow up on what Mr. Chen Puleng and Mr. Tan Ka-Piu said. You talked about the project taking 5.5 years to complete. I want to ask, after 5.5 years, starting from today, the construction of the welfare facilities will be completed and the social welfare department will start tendering for operators? Or is it when the Hong Kong Housing Society completing the bare shell and it would take 5.5 years for you to complete relevant procedures? I hope this is not what your plan is. Or would the 5.5 years just be for construction? So when you talk about 5.5 years today, you also have a timeline for land grant. So I want to ask what you'll do in the 5.5 years in that case. For the second question, the chairman actually helped the administration. You talked about $130.5 million. 30% of that would be for fitting out works of welfare premises. I'm not sure if my understanding is correct. Basically, the fitting out works of welfare premises will be undertaken by NGOs and their costs will be taken from these funds, and there will be a cap. I believe they talked about caps before, so I would just want to confirm if this applies to fitting out works of welfare premises. I also want to ask, when there is a discrepancy between the estimate and the actual cost, I very much agree with what Mr. Tan Ka-Piu said, because this is going to be finalized 5.5 years later at least. So I want to ask, when you tender for operators, how will you ask the operators to plan for the discrepancy? Mr. Alan Yong. Thank you, Mr. Lam, for your questions. 5.5 years would start from after land is granted, and then the design will be done by the Housing Society and they'll do the construction works. Once the works are completed, we will have operators start their fitting out works. We hope that within 12 months the fitting out works can be completed. So that wouldn't be another 5.5 years, please rest assured. As for the second question of the member, we do have a component plan for the fitting out works of welfare premises. We have actually accounted for inflation in our estimates. In general, it should be enough in past experience. the operators may incur a higher cost than our suggested costs. For example, the child care centers would want to have some massage pools for children, and these operators understand that this is an additional cost, and they will pay out of their own pockets for this, or they may apply for additional funding from somebody such as the Jockey Club. I believe what we have planned should be more than enough for fitting out works of welfare premises in general. Thank you. Any follow-up questions? None? Mr. Chang Ho Feng. Thank you. My question is actually similar to those of Mr. Tan Ka-Pew about the accessibility of the welfare facilities. If we look at the map, the site is not close to either Yao Tong Station or Lam Tin Station. It would take approximately 15 minutes to get to Yao Tong Station. I tried it myself, and there are not many barrier-free facilities. And I think it would have been better if you had a residential care home for the elderly, because you wouldn't have people coming in and out. But with a daycare center for the elderly and neighborhood elderly center, you would have many elderly persons probably taking the MTR to get to the facilities, or they may have to use wheelchairs. So I want to ask if you have communicated with the Highways Department or the CEDD to improve on accessibility of the facilities. I also note with the costs, fitting out works of welfare facilities account for 30% of the total cost, and the on cost payable to the Hong Kong Housing Society and furniture and equipment would be 20%. I want to ask if you have been communicating with the Housing Society to make sure we are providing to them furniture and equipment that they need, because otherwise we would incur additional costs in replacing the furniture and equipment. Mr. Alan Young, thank you. I want to clarify something. Close to this side, we have public housing developments as well as other residential developments. We should have an additional population of close to 20,000 in future. The facilities seek to serve this additional population. But as Mr. Tan Ka-Pew said, there may be other people who would want to take advantage of the facilities. We did talk about how there would be an additional population of 20,000. In future, there are some public transport facilities planned to meet this additional population. Don't worry, the government's plans accounted for this. The speaker's microphone is not on. Please turn on the member's microphone. Thank you. About the second question on fitting out works of welfare premises, only a bare shell will be provided. They will do the utilities works. And in future, the operators that we have chosen will conduct fitting out works, ceiling, air conditioning, lighting, fitting out works in general. I believe there will not be additional things that they would remove. Well, so the 20% would be for the operators, not the housing society. Right, 20% is reserved for fitting out works. Well, but I see here it says on cost payable to the Hong Kong Housing Society, so I'm not sure if it's for the operators or the Hong Kong Housing Society. Any follow-up? Well, that's on cost payable to the Hong Kong Housing Society, as well as furniture and equipment. And the furniture and equipment part will be for the operators specifically. I guess we didn't write it all out. I apologize for the confusion. Thank you. Miss Jenny Mann. Thank you, Chair. I have 2 questions. For the daycare center for the elderly, it will provide 60 places. We are trying to promote aging in place. We will have a greater demand of daycare services. With this new facility, can we provide more spaces or more places? As for parking spaces, we will have carers probably driving the elderly persons or children to the facilities. We did not see any mention of provision of parking spaces in the paper, so I want to ask if we'll have additional parking spaces apart from those provided at the public housing development. On the Secretary, for the general neighborhood, we have residential places on Human Street. We also have 250 places on Yanwing Street. We also have 100 on Wangchu Road and another 50 in the vicinity. We're referring to this site. That is just a small part of the bigger picture. This is just a single block development, so we cannot provide a daycare center that has, say, 100 or 200 places. It's not one of those larger centers. When we are trying to provide facilities at the other sites, we will make a report again to the panel to apply for funding. Thank you. Mr. Alan Young. Thank you. We have a design capacity of 60. In general, elderly persons will not be at the centers 6 days a week. In future, the operators will have regard to the usage patterns and release the place for other elderly persons who have such needs. So the design capacity may be 60, but we can probably account for more than 60 elderly persons. And in general, as I said earlier, we have a shorter waiting time. We do want to have the places provided in different facilities in the neighborhood. As for parking spaces, we will have minibus routes getting to the facilities. Some of the elderly persons may be frail, so we consider it inappropriate for them to rely on MTR to get to the facilities. We will arrange for buses to convey them to the facilities. We will also try to make 4 stops here to drop off elderly persons and children. Thank you. Mr. Hong Kam In, I am very concerned about the development progress of the Cha Kuo Ling village development, including land resumption and site formation. I want to ask for Site E in particular. Do we have good progress in land resumption and site formation? Can we meet the future development timeline? I also appreciate the government adopting a multi-pronged approach to increase the provision of welfare facilities. In Kwun Tong, we have 670,000 odd in population. We have great demand for social welfare facilities. With the additional population, I believe most of them would be younger families. So you should have in mind when you're planning for social welfare facilities demand, especially with the provision of childcare facilities. But we only have a childcare center planned. I want to ask, in the vicinity, are there childcare services provided to residents of Cha Kuo Ling to meet the great demand? As for neighborhood elderly center, we have observed in the district many occasions elderly persons really like seeing children. So in future, can we have the neighborhood elderly center have some sort of interface with services for children and the youth while meeting demand in the district? Thank you. Chair. Under Secretary, thank you, Mr. Hong, for your questions. We're putting in place a standalone child care center exactly for this reason. We would have 0 to 2-year-old children being cared for in the child care center. As you may know, in the private sector, we do not have much supply of such facilities, so we try to construct more. But there is great demand. So in general, we have not enough in provision, and citizens in general rely on domestic helpers or they care for the children themselves. So with this standalone child care center, this is something we put in place because we see there is great demand. Once the children reach 3 to 6 years old, we do not have information because this is under the purview of Education Bureau. We will see if there are other facilities in the vicinity on this. We will perhaps report on this at the Public Works Subcommittee meeting. To provide a bigger picture, I believe we can meet the needs for 0 to 2-year-old children's childcare services. Thank you.
Next, Mr. Webster. Thank you, Chair. I have 3 questions. First, on the service demand as well as resource allocation. I see that paragraphs 7 to 9 of the government paper mention the statistics in Kwun Tong district. Is this a very detailed projection made by the government? As mentioned, this site is quite far away from the MTR station, so I'm worried about the usage rate. I don't want any resources to be put to waste. Will the government adopt any KPIs to assess the usage rate? Second, about resource allocation. According to the paper, the government will adopt a multi-pronged approach to introduce social welfare facilities. Will the LWB work with the Housing Department as well as the Development Bureau to make good use of the existing facilities nearby to reduce the overall cost of the project? Thirdly, about long-term operating costs. I see from the paper that there is only mention of the construction cost. If I understand correctly, after the site is passed to the SWD, in terms of the fitting out works as well as the cost for staff, they will be borne by the government. Has the government made an assessment of the recurrent expenditure for the 5 to 10 years after the facility is built? Will this be included in the long-term financial planning of the SWD? And the Secretary, I'll ask Mr. Yung to talk about the construction works. This will be included as part of the recurrent expenditure of the SWD. However, we haven't yet decided on the figure. We'll have to wait for the tender to be done first. We account for 20% of the total expenditure of the government spending. A lot of them is cash handout, for example, old age living allowance, CSSA, as well as living allowance for elderly people. And we're talking about procurement service to be provided, and it will cost about $10 to $20 billion. And the expenditure that grows the fastest will be the spending on elderly care services. We have plans to increase our expenditure on this, and at the same time we are trying to encourage childbirth. So with the facilities, we hope to alleviate the burden of families who are planning to give birth to children. As for the other questions, I defer to Mr. Yong. On cross-departmental collaboration between SWD and other departments, as mentioned, there are other development projects in Ling. Near Chakwa Ling, Upper Hill, there is a public housing development project that will provide 2,250 housing units, and we will introduce residential care services for the elderly people as well as people with disabilities. There will be training centers for the disabled. We avoid concentrating all the facilities or resources on one particular site or one housing estate because we want to make good use of the space we have. This is because some elderly care centers are subject to a building height. We want to make use of the corridors in housing estates as well as the temporary parking spaces for people to send their family members to these facilities, and this can also help us reduce construction costs. Next, Ms. Grace Chan, I want to follow up on what the members asked before. Mr. Hong and the other member asked about cross-generational facility. That is how these facilities can interact with each other to make sure that we can build a cross-generational community. The facility is planned for 60 service places. If there is expansion of the construction site or the relevant facilities, we will need a more detailed projection or more precise estimate of the number of service places to be provided. So I would like the government to take note of the cross-generational issue. Under Secretary, I thank Ms. Chan for the comment. We will think about how the facilities can complement each other in a better way. For now, we will focus on the Neighborhood Elderly Center and the Child Care Center on this site. For Neighborhood Elderly Center, we're talking about the younger elderly. As for daycare center for the elderly, they will need more nursing care. As for the child care center, we offer services to those aged between 0 and 2. We might need carers who can hold these babies, and they may be very heavy, like 10 kilograms. So we will see how we can provide services in a better way. Yes, Deputy Secretary. In terms of the service places, the population has yet to move in, so we stick to the Hong Kong planning standards and guidelines. We look at the population that will move in as well as the provision of facilities. Then we decide on whether there is adequate provision of facilities. As there is population move in, the actual service demand may be different. We will follow up on this. I myself have a question. This has been asked by many other members, but I would like to raise this question again. I understand that you have to ask for the funding approval from LegCo in order to grant the site to the housing society. We encourage the introduction of social welfare facilities for public housing estates. That's part of the government's policy. Now you are asking for $130 million for this project. As for the fitting out works and other costs, they will account for 50% of the project estimate. You said that you factor in inflation and so on. How come you don't just ask for the construction cost and then you can carry on with your plan? Because this is just an estimate, right? I believe once you have kickstarted this project, LegCo members will not stop you from carrying on with the project. You're asking for this amount for funding, but it seems that there are uncertainties to how much money you actually need. You said that you have consulted the public on the need for elderly care services. Well, can you explain more clearly why you are asking for funding approval at this stage? And you're even including the construction costs in your project estimate. You understand my question? Yes, Mr. Yong. On the construction costs, after the facility is built and after the facility is passed to the Financial Secretary Incorporated, we will pay the construction costs. But then before we grant the site to the Housing Society, we have to be clear with the financial plan, which covers how much money we will need for the project. We have to be sure that we will be able to pay the fee to the Housing Society. That's why we have to reserve this amount of money first. Before we actually pay out the money, it would be included in the government's reserve. Yes, I understand. I'm asking about the construction costs. In the past, we made use of the lottery fund, and we waited until the facilities are built to come up with a project estimate, and then we pay the NGO concerned. But now we are asking for funding as a public works project. We cannot chop it into pieces. We cannot first ask for $40 million and then $30 million. This is because below $15 million, it will be regarded as a minor works project. We don't want to give people the impression that we are deceiving the public. Usually, service contractors have to take care of the fitting out works too, but this project is rather special. This is because the SWD have their thoughts about the fitting out works. They want to come up with a thematic design. If we notice that the amount of money we asked for is not enough, then we will allocate extra funding to the relevant organizations. We may even make use of other funds we have to pay out the fitting out costs. I think what is important that you have to explain this to LegCo members and the relevant personnel. This is because you have the money to pay out the construction costs, but you're still asking for the approval, funding approval. Well, you've explained that. You said that this is about $50 million and that you do not want to chop the project into pieces. All right, if you have no further questions, I'll ask members if you agree to submit this proposal to the Public Works Subcommittee. Okay, you all agree? There being no further matters, meeting adjourned. Thank you.